Welcome to Fertility Village. This is your weekly live talk show where community and support come together. With rotating hosts, expert guests, and meaningful conversations, we're here to guide you through the highs and the lows of infertility. Whether you're searching for answers, seeking advice, or just looking for a special place to belong, Fertility Village is your space to connect, learn, and grow. Because it really does take a village, and we are here for you every step of the way. Thanks for joining.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fertility Village. I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Sarah, and today we are joined by Elaine and Sheena, who are the Embryo Donor and Recipient Program Manager and Coordinator at Beginnings Family Services. And we also have Allison and Norma joining us, who are embryo adoption recipients. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are so excited to hear about this unique program. We have tons of questions, and I'm going to guess that we're going to have some from our viewers too. So we are going to dive right in. So we're going to get right to it. So the first question we're starting off with is for Elaine or Sheena. Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and what made you get into the work you do?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Elaine, and I'm the program manager at Beginnings. And my interest in this work really started with my own experience with infertility. So back in the late 1990s, I went through IVF at a time when it was still fairly new. The success rates were only about 30%, and the whole process was a lot less advanced than it is today. So it was a really tough time, but I connected with others that were going through similar struggles, and those shared experiences kind of created strong bonds, just like this is doing for everyone today. And then in 2000, I adopted my daughter from Russia when it was open at the time. And that experience led me to a career in child welfare. And I worked at the Adoption Council of Ontario and also provided post-adoption support through Halton Children's Aid. And a lot of my work was focused on helping families after adoption. And that really shaped my understanding of the different ways that people build families and the kind of supports that they need. And then fast forward in 2023, I met Mary Howlett-Nero, who was the director of the Embryo Donation and Recipient Program at the time at Beginnings. And she introduced me to the program, and I was immediately interested. Knowing how far IVF has come since I went through it and learning about the large number of embryos that were currently frozen across Canada, it made sense for me and to me that embryo donation could be another meaningful path to parenthood for some people. So I joined the program as a counselor. And then in 2024, after Mary retired, I took on the program manager position. And this work kind of brings together my personal and professional experience. Because I know what it's like to face fertility challenges. And, I've spent a lot of time supporting people through different kinds of family building. So I feel very lucky to be part of this program.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about the Beginnings Embryo Donation Program and what makes it so special and unique?
So Beginnings is a national Canada-based not-for-profit agency. So that's right off the bat, how unique it is. It connects people with remaining IVF embryos to individuals or couples hoping to grow their families through embryo donation. Our program operates under the guidelines of the Health Canada and the Assisted Human Reproduction Act, and it ensures responsible practice. So the embryo donations are altruistic. And what we do is we prioritize a relationship-centered match, which makes our program so unique. So one of the significant aspects that distinguishes it is that it's a mutual matching program. So that means that both the donor and the recipient are actively involved in choosing one another. So we don't assign matches or rely on anonymous donations. Instead, we take time to understand each party's values, what their hopes for contact is and what their preferences are. And they only move forward if both sides feel good about the connection. So that mutual approach kind of gives a good foundation for open communication. And we also work with people who come to us already matched. So for example, if there's through an online connection or a personal or family network. And so in those cases, we offer pre-match services, which are designed to help ensure everything is being done properly and in the best interest of everyone involved. So that includes providing education, mandatory counseling, guidance, coordination, because there's lots of it, with legal, medical openness, expectations, and shipping. And I'm sure I'm missing something because Sheena does it all. So it's about making sure that the process is clear and supported right from the beginning.
That's amazing.
Another special part of our program is the ongoing support that we provide after a match is made. So one example of that, and Norma and Allison are a big part of that, is our peer-led support group for recipients and donors. So it offers a space where people can share their experiences. They can ask questions and connect with others who are going through similar journeys. Because embryo donation is still relatively new and it's not widely discussed. It's becoming more popular, but there isn't really a space to have honest conversations. So that can make a significant difference.
Can I ask, how new is it? Like within 10, 20, 30 years?
So we started in 2010. And our first embryo baby through the program was born in 2013. So we've had 90 babies born since then.
Wow.
And we have, I think, 8 or 9 due for this year. Yeah.
Crazy.
That's amazing. I am a beginnings adoptive parent, so I get the newsletters and I love every year getting all the little babies because they include both the infant adoptions and the embryo adoption babies. And it's really special to see how many every year. It's really exciting stuff. I'm going to jump back to Sheena, and I'm going to ask you again to tell us a little bit about yourself. And our next question, if you could follow up with that, is what should families know about the donation program, and what is the process for families looking to donate embryos?
So I'm Sheena. I am the coordinator of the embryo donation program. I'm a little bit newer to the program. I'm covering it while Julia is off on a leave. So my background started similar to Elaine in child welfare. I was there for quite some time with a main focus on domestic violence and sexual abuse investigation. So that was what I primarily focused on. Then I took some time off to be home with my own children, and I did some work for supervised access for non-custodial parents for a little bit. And then I got passionate about volunteering within my community. I volunteered at my local food bank for several years. And where I really fell in love was volunteering at my local hospice, where I ran some volunteer groups where we went through the HPCO training, which is the hospice and palliative care training. And we focused a lot on grief and how to support people through grief. And I love it there. Like, it's one of my favorite places to be. And then from there, a friend of mine told me about Beginnings, told me about the embryo donation program, and that there was a position available. And although the timing was kind of strange, it worked out really, really well. And I interviewed with Elaine, loved the program, and really felt connected with her. And here I am.
That's amazing. Everyone starts as a volunteer. I think everybody in this field definitely has that calling to volunteer in some of the harder areas. Again, at Oasis, all of our peer support people are volunteers. And it's just really important, but special too, to be able to give back to community like that. And I think it helps in our own personal healing too, but that's just my personal opinion.
Totally
so yeah, what should families know about the program when they're looking to donate embryos? What's the process like?
Well, when you're looking to donate, the first step is to just reach out to us. So that would be the number one step, is to just reach out to our info account, which is info@beginnings.ca. And from there, you'll be connected to Simona, who's our wonderful admin, and she will send you an information email. And it's going to walk you through an outline of our program, give you some basic information. From there, you're going to get a follow-up email from myself or Elaine just asking if you have any questions. For recipients, for donors, they're welcome to review our registration package. Our registration package for donors includes a registration form, a consent form for their fertility clinic, some family donor information about their background and their history. And then once they fill out that paperwork, they send it back to us, and then we will reach out to their fertility clinic and request their embryology report on their behalf, as well as infectious disease blood work, and as well as information about the embryos, such as how they were thawed and frozen, so that we have that information if they're to be matched. From there, we will reach out to them and let them know that we've received this information. And then we will schedule a consultation with them via Zoom, because we're a national program. Everything is via Zoom. So we meet with them and we really just go over the program in depth. We show them, walk them step by step through the program, what it's going to look like, and it allows them a chance to ask any questions that they have. At any point during this process, they're not obligated to continue. So if they decide after the consultation they don't want to move forward, then that's it, and the process ends right there. If, however, they continue to want to move forward at that point, what we would do is we would schedule their implications counseling session, which is a mandatory session where we talk about the implications of donating your embryos, and that your genetic children would be raised by another family. So we sort of walk through that. We talk about openness, and we talk about their feelings all around that. From there, we generate a report that is both a psychosocial report, so about their background information, as well as some information about their fertility history, the embryos available. And this information will then be shared with the recipient if they're matched, as well as a clinic if they're matched. It's mandatory that we send that information over to the clinic. At that point, a donor is considered to be match ready, and they're ready to join our matching round. So that's sort of the process. I don't know if you want me to keep talking about the matching round. I could talk forever, so I don't want to get too carried away.
Maybe just a little bit, so people know what they're getting into when you're talking about matching. Because a lot of our viewers may have just been through just fertility, and they don't understand necessarily that matching process through embryo adoption and regular adoption, through public adoption, all those things. Matching, very important.
Yeah, and ours is unique in that it's a mutual matching process. So we usually have about 4 matching rounds a year. Every matching round begins with all of the recipients in our program being sent an anonymous donor profile. That profile is a 3-letter code that I know who this person is, but it doesn't give identifying information to the recipients. It does, however, include information like physical characteristics of the donors, how many embryos are available, some of their health history, their fertility journey, what kind of openness that they're looking for, and what kind of recipients they're looking for, because some of our donors are very open and they're more looking for a fit, while some of our donors may have a very specific requirement that they're looking for, so we include that in the profile. From there, our recipients let us know who they would like to be presented to. So that anonymous donor profile is something that we write for the donors. Every one of our recipients, as I'm so sure Allison and Norma can attest to, make their own profile books. So it's full of pictures, it's full of a little bit of background information about them, introducing them to a donor family. So once we know who all of our recipients want to be presented to, one by one, we go through our donors. We present to one donor at a time, and we send them the recipients' profiles. And they then let us know who they would like to be matched with. At this point, there's no pressure, though. If they say, you know what, there's nobody this round that I want to match with, they move on to the next matching round, and that's no issue. They can stay in our program for as long as they'd like to.
That's very, very cool. Can you also just talk about openness? Because again, people from a fertility standpoint maybe don't understand that term for openness.
Elaine, did you want to take this one?
You're fine to take it.
You're both great. So,
openness is a fundamental piece to our program. So if somebody wants an anonymous donation, or to like either as a donor or a recipient, they wouldn't be a good fit, because we follow the adoption philosophy that openness is best for children, whether they're adopted or donor conceived. So, openness can be minimally just exchanging contact information, so that you know how to contact one another if needed, and then it can go to, as the relationship, if it develops organically into a friendship, then there could be visits. And as children develop, their questions change, their needs change, and so down the road there could be face-to-face visits. Now, what that really means is, because we're child-centered, the donors have children who are genetically connected to the recipient's children. So they may be asking to meet their biological siblings. So every stage is different. We support people through every stage. So we don't, once the match is made, it doesn't mean that we disappear. You can come to us and we can help support that if needed. But oftentimes we find that because the matches are good, we don't need to get involved. Relationships develop on their own, and it's outlined at the beginning. We have what's called a first meeting, where that discussion happens and a foundation is laid as to what everyone's comfort level is, and then it grows from there. And this way, children and donated, the donor conceived children never have questions. They're never wondering. They know what their history is, and it just becomes part of their story. And everybody deserves to know what their story is.
Absolutely. That's great. Thanks.
Thank you. So I want to turn it over to Allison and Norma, because we haven't gotten to hear from you yet. Could you just introduce yourselves quickly and just talk a little bit about how you first learned about embryo adoption and what kind of led you to consider this in your path to parenthood?
Sure. Allison, do you want to go first?
Sure, we'll go alphabetical this time. So my name is Allison, and I am happy to say at this point I am the proud mom of an 18-month-old next week. So thank you. I was in my late 30s when I met my husband, and time was not on our side for starting a family. And so, yeah, we were challenged with trying to come up with how we were going to approach this. We worked with a fertility team for a year, and we really weren't getting anywhere. Age was probably the biggest factor for both of us, but we didn't really feel like it was our path to explore that further or figure where the infertility challenges were. We decided to focus our attention and our resources, both time and financial resources, to look at traditional adoption. Being here in Ontario, we focused on getting Adopt Ready and wanted to do domestic adoption, private, and that was our choice. We thought that was our best go-to. Yeah, and for anybody who's watching this, you just don't realize the landscape until you're in it. You're knocking, pounding, ringing doorbells of every agency that you can get your hands on, trying to find someone to help you just be exposed to the right situation or family. And it wasn't until we were picked up and accepted by Beginnings in the traditional adoption route that we learned of the embryo donation program. So although my story is quite short, it wasn't until we were in the adoption stream that we learned about this embryo donation program. And I think that's one of the reasons that both Norma and I volunteer to yell this from the rooftops, because we just need more people to hear about this possibility and a way to build your family. Yeah, so here we are. I'm now 45, and it's a wonderful chance for anyone who feels that maybe time isn't on their side anymore as they're going through this challenge of building their family. So
it's hard to follow up with from Allison, because she's so articulate and I just want to listen to her all day long. But I'm happy to share my story as well. It's I'm sure a lot of people here feel the pain of infertility. And prior to going into this whole journey, I just kind of was like, I don't know, like it's probably easy. Who knows? My story, it was a 12-year journey to arrive at. I'm the mom of 2 daughters, 6 years old, and our other daughter is 20 months old. But I found myself single in my early 30s, and I'm like, I want to be a mom, and I'm in my 30s. What does this look like? So I went down the path of freezing eggs, which took a long time. And then I met Mr. Right in my late 30s after freezing eggs. And we got married, and we gave birth to Mila, who, it was a spontaneous pregnancy after all the doctors in the world told me that it wouldn't happen. So I was laughing in their faces. And then I'm like, great. If it can happen once, it can happen again. And unfortunately, when Mila was 7 months old, I had a miscarriage. And that was a huge reality check to me, thinking like, this is just such a precarious, sensitive, delicate process that I took for granted the first time. So we were like, okay, backup plan, got eggs. Perfect. Let's go. And those eggs dissolved into nothing. So after we got like 6 embryos out of it. And by day 6, they had all sort of disappeared. So our hopes had, we came up against a wall. We're like, our hopes for growing our family had just diminished. We always thought we would have more than one. And so the anguish of secondary for infertility was super painful. And so we're like, all right, let's do it. Well, let's forget IVF. No, I'm so done with it. Adoption. Let's go. Chris and I always felt called to adoption. And it just felt right. And so we went headlong into it like it was a job. And like Allison was saying, like I was basically putting flyers up everywhere. Like there was nothing I wouldn't do to adopt a baby. We went through this wonderful program called Pride. And it allowed us the gift of going through that process. And I'm sure Allison would say the same, is that it allowed us to understand the beauty of an open relationship. So it was, through Beginnings, essentially, we were signed up with Beginnings, waiting for about a year to be matched with a birth mom, but it just never happened. But then Mary from Beginnings said, you know what, have you thought or heard of embryo donation before? And then I'm like, oh my goodness, I have a uterus. This could happen. So it was just like hope was reignited. And we went, like, I threw all my eggs into that basket. And from there we were matched. We were matched, and actually not once, but twice. The first one wasn't a success, but it was just, I can get into that a little bit later, but it was a wonderful gift. And Beginnings was an amazing gift for us in our path to growing our family.
Oh, thank you for sharing, both of you. And I'm so sorry for kind of the hardship that you have to go through. I myself am also a 14-year fertility warrior before we were matched with our son. So I know that struggle, and I know the losses, and it's hard to regain that hope. So I'm really glad that you got that back with this Beginnings program, because it's hard to find sometimes. So that's great. That moves us into our next question for both of you again. What was the process like for how did you navigate with your fertility clinics?
You go first this time, Norma.
Okay. With the fertility clinics, like through Beginnings, Beginnings actually led us. We were with a different fertility clinic through like the whole egg freezing process. And because our first match was day 3 embryos, Beginnings led us to connect with another clinic in Toronto that actually was a better fit for us. And I met the doctor there, and I'm like, where have you been all my life? And I realized it's such an emotional journey. It isn't like, hey, my first stab at it was match me with the most competent, experienced doctor here. And he's like, perfect, found her, here, go. Emotionally wasn't a fit. But then I met with the second fertility clinic and I was like, oh my word, where have you been all my life? Literally, through my transfers, I was dying laughing and he had to tell me to stop laughing so he could hold his hands. So, you know, the emotional aspect of it, I underestimated that too. But it was quite smooth. We just had to, with the fertility clinic in general, once we were matched, then it was the process, the legal process. We had to get that underway. And then we had to move our little sweet souls to our clinic that would receive them. Because I don't think all clinics receive outside embryos, but I could be wrong. But we were very happy to welcome our little embryos to our clinic. And then we just went through the getting me ready. Then it was like, okay, I got to get dressed for the party. So, you know, I was pumped all of the drugs, all of the things, the full cocktail. And so that, you know, after a few transfers, we were successful.
Awesome. How about you, Allison? How was your clinic with the whole process?
So the original fertility clinic that I worked with back in 2020, I approached them to ask if they worked with beginnings and was met with a no. And they would happily talk to me about what they have available. And I said, yes, but very interested in working with this open embryo donation program. And they again tried to just turn me back around to the services and the options that they had within their menu. So I turned to Beginnings and asked for a recommendation. I said, what fertility teams have you worked with that are on board, that are excited, that believe in this program? And they introduced me to Markham Fertility Center. I'm going to give them a shout out because they are rock stars. And they
too. Love them.
Yeah, they welcomed me, and I presented what I wanted to do and how I wanted to see this come about. And I asked for what their checklists were, to which, you know, they said, well, start working through the process with Beginnings, and in the meantime, you'll work through the wait list on our side to get in with one of the doctors. And I kind of giggled to myself because I think they don't know me. So working with their surrogacy and donor program specifically, I turned around pretty quick and said, we're matched. Like, let's go. Like, who are we ready to go? And they were fantastic. It's about 2.5 hours from where I live. They were extremely accommodating and helpful. And so we went from learning about the program end of September, October, to doing my first transfer in the middle of March. And that was it. So we kind of joke that I'm like this poster child for what can happen, because when you're at the point in your journey where you have accepted all of the other layers, all of the, you know, the emotional and social pieces, then the technical fertility clinic side of it was actually quite easy. And I say that as someone who had to take progesterone and oil, right? So I say easy, but in comparison to some of the other stories, like I worked with a team who went straight to the best practice first time, and we weren't messing around. So yeah.
You know what? It sounds though like you're a really good advocate for yourself, because that along a fertility journey is really difficult for a lot of people. And we see that a lot in our support groups of people just really not knowing where to turn, what to ask their doctors, how to like feel confident in their treatment. So the fact you were able to do that and it paid off, really, it paid off and was successful, is like really meaningful and really an inspiration. So,
and I do want to say to anybody listening, if you're getting the, Next month, we'll try this. Next month, we'll try this. Next month. There is no next month. I'm not playing next month. I'm playing now, this cycle, right now. Like that's what you need your fertility team working with you now, not next cycle. And if you're not getting that, then find another team, because there's some fantastic ones out there.
I love it. Girl, you need to come be one of our
conversation starter. I was going to say
conversation starters. Yeah, we have support group this Monday, guys. If you need to sign up, and we're always looking for conversation starters for our lovely guests here. So I'll leave it to Kaylee for our next question. Thank you so much, Allison.
Yeah, this one's for Allison and Norma as well. I want to talk a little more about the emotional aspect of what you went through. So what was the response from your family and your friends, and what kind of support did you have as you went through all of this, long journey?
So I think in our situation, because everyone witnessed and watched as we struggled with the traditional adoption process, like that was a really eye-opening experience. And when you get to the end of being adopt ready, the kind of wall that you're up against, we had to be our own advocates. We didn't put flyers on telephone poles, but we were pretty darn close. We had our own website. We were telling everybody and anybody who was interested, because you never know where that match might have come. It might have been through a church or a grocery store or somebody in the neighborhood. You just never know. And because everybody really walked through that process with us, when we were presented with the opportunity to have me carry, for me to be able to be pregnant, for me to be able to take control of that part of the story, that was a huge game changer. And I think as much as it was scary, especially for the elders on both sides, like both my husband's parents and mine were very leery. This is like mad science, right? You're doing what? Hold on, how? But for them to be able to see the positive and the elements that we could really take control and have, like, just from the health side, from being able to know this entire pregnancy and the journey that this little being was going to be on, and how loved and how welcomed and how wanted they were. I use the expression double love, like the donor needed to want this embryo to have a chance, and then we ran with that and so wanted this embryo to come to be our babe. And they just kind of grew into it. And my dad was the one I thought was going to be the trickiest. And he and my son are like two peas in a pod. So they very much embraced what it is. They are always listening when they hear something on TV or on the radio about, the situation, like the 1 in 6 and everything that we hear and know now about infertility and how common it is. Like, they've become advocates for the program. And yeah, I don't think we've had one of the elders really struggle with it. But everybody else has really jumped on board, and they see the benefits. I think they also see the beauty that I got to enjoy that pregnancy, which is something that I had grieved and I thought, was not part of our story. So yeah.
That's amazing.
That's wonderful.
How about you, Norma? What was your support system like?
Before I get into that, I also have to shout out the clinic, if it's possible, since we're naming names. The clinic I was a part of was Create, and I don't know if anyone has, been part of this clinic before, but Dr. Bratz was my doctor, and I'm telling you, to walk into a clinic and to be known by name by him, I'm like, wait, what? He remembers my name. Like, it's just a new concept for me. I'm like, I'm a number. And he's like, hey, Norma, how's it going? He actually had a nickname, not even a name. He's like, hey, Big Mac, what's going on? I'm like, this is just nuts. So, and then I actually had a friend of mine, I was very open about our story on social media, like, hey, I'm pregnant, and this isn't the type of pregnancy you think it is. And I shared that to everyone, and in hopes that it would help people not be so secret about it, because I had, you feel like this need to hide the pain and trauma of all of it. And that's what was hardest for me, is like, who do I tell, and who is safe to tell, and how do we navigate this world all alone? And then that story led to a friend of mine coming forward and saying, hey, I'm struggling too, and I'm getting nowhere with my clinic. What do I do? And she went to create, and within a year and a half, she had a baby. So very exciting.
It's a big one in all of our support groups for as long as I can remember, as go hand in hand with the advocacy bit, is that don't look for the cheapest clinic. Don't look for the shortest wait list. Find a doctor that you really jive with. And that doesn't necessarily have to be at a different clinic. You can interview doctors at all the clinics. People know me in my support group. I said, I think I interviewed 15 doctors between 2 clinics to make sure I had the right one when I was going through fertility. So again, kudos to both of you for advocating for yourself and finding that right fit. It's not easy at all.
Yeah. And it's so easy when you know nothing to look at a wait list and go, I'll just go to the shorter one because that's faster. But it doesn't necessarily mean it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the emotional response from family and friends and the support and this whole process, they, like my family, I'm just so blessed because my family is like beyond awesome, to the point where they so desperately, my sister has 4 kids. So she's like, okay, come on. Like, when is it going to happen? So she's my biggest advocate, as are her children. She's much older than me and she has got older kids. My niece actually was like, look, I'll carry for you. How do we make this happen? She's like, they're so sweet. They're always in our corner to make this happen for us. So when this option came around, everyone was like literally throwing a parade. They were just so happy. And then, when it resulted in, Harlow being born into this world, I can't emphasize enough the party that was thrown when she was born and the celebration that was had. However, my dad, I think the older group, they have a bit of a difficult time understanding the genetic aspect of all of this, because literally the baby, she was, 6 hours old, and he was the first one at the hospital, so excited to hold her. But he had this puzzled look on his face because he was like, I can't see who she looks like. Is it you? Or like, I can't really identify. Who does she look like more? I'm like, oh, Dad, because she's of Brazilian lineage. I'm like, well, neither of us really, but so it's cute. So there's some people that it's like you just can't bother explaining because they never will understand. But a lot of people, I kind of do want to make the effort to explain it, because there are just so many people who don't understand the science of it, or that it's even an option, that if one person understands it and they know another person who's struggling, potentially then that person can have an answer they didn't know existed, right? So the more people I share this story with, the better, which is kind of the reason why I'm here. Why Allison and I are wanting to shout this from the rooftops, because it's just such a wonderful option that literally we didn't know existed. I went through the egg freezing. And so that was years and years of, it took like 3 years to do, plus adoption training, worked with the practitioner to get that. So it was like years and years of that. And then finally we learn about it. So like, why did it take so long? So that's why we're here, is if for the folks that potentially are, have embryos in freezers and they keep paying their fees every year and they don't know what to do with it because they're stuck and they can't make a decision. I just wish the clinics would, present this as an option as opposed to not. So anyway.
That's great. I'm really glad you shared that. I'm going to go out of order on our questions a little bit, because I do want to bring it back to Sheena and Elaine about what advice you would give people considering embryo donation / adoption, but from a donation standpoint, because we don't have a donor here. But you'll hear it in our podcasts. You'll hear it in some of our support groups of like, what do people do with those surplus embryos? And it's a really tough decision for people. So we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back to Allison and Norma. But Elaine, Sheena, what advice would you give to those people considering embryo donation? Is where I'm going with this.
Like to donate their
to donate their embryos.
Yeah,
because again, it's come up a lot in our podcast recently, and people just really don't. It's a hard choice. So.
Yeah, it's a very emotional decision I like to make, and if you're so we will provide a consultation, to explain the process, because it's an altruistic donation, so it's illegal in Canada to be paid to donate your embryos, but expenses. You can be reimbursed. They're reimbursable expenses. But some people who want to donate think that it's, I'll just donate the embryos and it'll be fairly quick. And it's not, because there's the whole process of having, and it's mandated to have implications counseling for both recipients and donors, because of the sensitivity around donating your genetic offspring to be raised by another family. And sometimes that's why we stay connected with our donors as well post-match, because we do have donors who go through the emotional piece, like after, a child is born. So there's different points. So they will, need to assess why they're making the decision, what openness would look like for them, the length of time that it might take, because they may, not find a suitable match. So these are all considerations. I don't know if I've missed anything, Sheena, but I think, those are some of the key things from a donor standpoint.
Is that counseling pretty like in-depth, time-consuming? Is it like a session?
Well, that depends. So when we have the consultation, we go over what the program looks like. If a donor decides that they want to move forward, we will then do, it's usually about 90 minutes, where we'll have it's a structured counseling session where specific questions are asked, and we assess emotional readiness. And when I say assess, I don't mean it like a home study. I mean, just if there's anything that donors are not considering in terms of how they, may want to sort of think about things, grieve, because there is grief around donating the embryos. They're basically, these embryos could have developed into their genetic children. So there's a sense of loss there. So considering those aspects of it, and really thinking about what is it going to be like for both parties. So if we see that, if it's a couple, for example, who are making the plan together, if one person is maybe not 100% on board, we may need to do another session, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll ask, they'll say, can we just have another session? Or, my spouse, my partner wants to just talk this through a bit more. There's no pressure. Even after a match is made, we will have conversations. There's always, we look for those sort of red flags if somebody's not ready, and we'll address it. Like if there's an elephant in the room, we will bring that up and ensure that everybody's safe, because emotional safety is super important.
The only thing I would add to that, because I think, Elaine, you covered it, is just ask questions. Like, that's what we're here for. Like, ask us questions. We are happy to answer them. And take the time you need. Our consultations don't expire. So if you have a consult with us and then you want to wait 5, 6 months, a year, that's okay. Take your time. We will be here when you're ready. And it's okay to pause at moments too. You know, we have sometimes donors and recipients in the program who, if they don't find a match one particular round, they might sit out a matching round, and that's okay. So the best advice I would say is tell us how you're feeling, because we will be happy to support whatever that is and whatever your choice is.
I have to ask, do you guys have any frequently asked questions? Sorry, Kaylee. Is there like a question that comes up regularly that you hear?
From donors, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, you think I'd know this because I do them on our Facebook page.
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I would say like the most one is like people just want to know what their options are in terms of donating. Sometimes a question people will have is if, let's say, they had 12 embryos, do they have to give all of their embryos to one family? The answer is no, you don't. You can decide to split the embryos, and we will work with an embryologist to help do that in a more equitable way, because we're not medical, so we don't make those decisions. But donors can choose to donate to 3 families, 4 families, as long as there's a minimum of 2 embryos going to each recipient family. That is a requirement of our program. So I would say that's a really big question, is the larger batches, if they have to give them all to one. The other thing I would say, donors, a lot of them feel very strongly that they don't want their embryos destroyed at any point. So there are options. One of the things we talk about in the first meeting is what happens to remaining embryos. And that is one of the conversations that we have. And it can be included in the legal agreement stage, what happens with remaining embryos. And there's a few options. Some donors want to see the rest of them ethically discarded. Some might want to see them donated to another recipient. And so those are some of the options that they have available.
If we ever have questions about the donors' embryos, because we do ask for the embryology report and the infectious disease blood work ahead of time. If we have any questions, we do consult with an embryologist just to see if there's sort of any concerns, because as Sheena said, we're not medical professionals, we're social workers. And so, you know, one of the pieces of advice that I would give for both donors and recipients is familiarize yourself with basic embryology terminology. You don't need to be an expert, but understanding the language can make medical conversations feel less overwhelming. So if a donor, prior to coming to us to donate, you know, may want to ask for those reports just and see ahead of time, so that they're not going through the process with us, only to find out that, you know, there might be some concerns. And for recipients to have that, again, you don't need to be an expert, because we're definitely not, but to have some familiarity with you know, grading and basic terminology.
Are most of the embryos that go through your program PGT tested?
No, I would say most of them are not PGT tested.
Interesting.
One of the things that's on the anonymous donor profile is we provide the grading of each of the embryos. And if they are PGT tested, we will note that on the profile. But I would say the majority are not.
Yeah, because these are people just like us, right? Who have gone through their fertility, didn't really anticipate having embryos to donate. They were just trying to, you know, have a child, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, PGT testing may not have been necessary at the time. So majority, no, they don't.
Interesting. Norma and Allison, could you answer that question as well? What would your advice be for someone who's considering donating their embryos?
Call, email. There's a lot of information to take in when you hear this for the first time. It's exciting because it gives you a glimmer of hope, but then there's so many questions. And I think the biggest thing is just to try and reach out, whether it be to like sleuth through the social media that Sheena does. There's a lot of answers and questions on there. Just like the basic understanding of the program to kind of get you a kickstart of what's possible. There are links to other interviews that Elaine and Sheena have done, and others. There's a lot of exciting possibilities, and it's just a matter of just start picking away at seeing if it resonates as something that you would want to do, and then email or call, because that's why they're in the office. they're there wanting to meet people who think this might be right for them. And I think as much as when I started talking about how we created our family, I was always thinking of it from a recipient standpoint. I think now, just also being a woman in my 40s and so many friends have embryos in the freezer, and the conversation has kind of turned where I'm putting on that hat and looking at so many people that are challenged with the options. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just start exposing yourself to a little bit more, because it's a world that I don't think any of us ever thought was possible, and it's changing lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say there's always more than one option. So if there's if you're thinking, I have these embryos and the only option is to terminate them or whatever, because there's always more. And one of the options could be just going, like Elaine and Sheena were talking about, just going down the path, just to dip your toe in the water, just to be like, does this feel right? Because I would have a ton of questions if I was sitting in that seat. And you never know also who you might be matched with. We are kind of privy to a story of a donor who it was almost like a serendipitous match. Like, from an ethnicity standpoint, they were exactly the same, Japanese and Canadian, as like from a recipient standpoint to themselves. So they were kind of looking in the mirror in a way, and any questions they had kind of fell away, or any apprehensions they had fell away when they met these people. They're like, oh, this is what was meant to be. So, but obviously they couldn't have known that going in, that this match was there for the taking. So yeah, I guess don't shut any doors until you feel like you have to. And there's probably always a way that you can just step back if it's not a place of comfort. If you're like, maybe not for me, then it's not for you. But at least maybe try. Yeah, like Allison was saying, pick up the phone and just see if it's an option.
I love that. That's fantastic. So we're moving in sort of to our last question, then we'll see if there's any viewer questions out there. Tanya will let us know. What is the relationship with the donor families like for you? And how are you going to talk about your children? How are you going to talk to your children about how they came to be, essentially, as they grow up? Will they know those donor families? And it leads to openness, which is why I asked the openness question earlier.
So for us, we were almost prepared to not have a totally open relationship, despite our adopt training and the home study that we did. It was almost the donor's request that they'll monitor, or they will lead that. So we were going in ready to just sort of give information and just sort of respect their boundaries. And it was to our surprise that the comfort level just kind of increased the more we got to know each other. And the other delightful aspect of our relationship is it's not just us and the donors, it's us and two other recipient families who have little ones. And so we have a family in and of itself. Despite if the donors wanted a family, we have each other. And so irregardless, we're kind of in my husband and I's mentality, we're thinking they will have each other. There's another girl and another boy, and then actually one of the couples is pregnant again. So the family keeps growing, because I think there was like 17 embryos or something divvied up. So it's this wonderful gift, and we've become like really good friends with them, as well as the donors. So we have like the donors they're actually in Florida, and we have this big plan to maybe just go to Disney together when the kids are old enough, because they're all kind of of the same age group. So yeah, we have a WhatsApp group, and we share videos and photos, and it's like the love you feel for your child is only shared. It's like, there's a halo effect because of it. So we're very blessed.
It's a lot of love. I love hearing
It's like
that.
a dream outcome.
Yeah, that's amazing. We know a story of one of our members of using donor sperm for conception, and she calls all the siblings from the donor sperm dibblings.
Yeah, siblings. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so they're all like half siblings. They're dibblings, but they all have their own families, and it's really special, like, to have all that love and to know that family. That's really awesome. How about you, Allison? How's your journey on that?
So we have a fantastic relationship with our donor, and when she created her embryos, she always knew that sperm donation was going to be part of her story. So she created her embryos, and was not planning on having many children. So she decided, because of her age and where things were, she only did one. So when we were able to accept the remaining embryos from that batch, it was also with the caveat and the knowledge that there are dibblings out there from the sperm donation element. And so we haven't explored much of the relationship. And at this point, like, we're talking a 1.5-year-old, I feel like when our kiddos in their teen years, there's going to be a lot of questions. And who knows how many other dibblings there will be from that sperm donation side. But we have a really tight relationship with our donor, because my kid and her kid are siblings, 100%, and they are spitting images of each other. So we have a great relationship. We keep in touch on socials. We've met. We are from opposite sides of the country. And so we've actually met face to face and had a play date. And our kids know of one another. So for my little guy, that's nothing at this point. But for her kiddo, he's referred to by name. Our donor is referred to by name in our family, and it's very open. And our adoption profile book is actually on the bookshelf with my kid's library. So when he wants to, he'll grab that book and be flipping through it and see pictures of mama and dada and the story that we told, trying to find someone to help us build our family. And so there's just this element, this segue, like it's just always part of his journey and story. So there's no question that the openness, not only with our donor family, but also having just that transparency and openness with our kids. So there's no doubt or question. And like we say, double the love.
Love that. That's beautiful. We do have one quick additional question for Sheena and Elaine. Could you just talk a little bit about the difference between adopting through Beginnings and maybe a Facebook group or something more along those lines?
Oh gosh, the pre-matches,
please.
Pre-matches
you have.
Yeah,
we're almost at the end, so quick, but that's okay. We'll run a little bit over if everyone's okay.
Okay, Sheena, I'm happy to, but you're the one that's had to deal with some complex. So they're complicated when you match on Facebook. It can be complicated. So I'll just start quickly. Like, the complexities of an embryo donation is challenging. So what we do is in a nutshell, we ensure that you're considering all aspects of the entire process, because each clinic has different protocols that are not necessarily easy to navigate in terms of what they'll accept and how things need to be done, and the paperwork, the legal agreements. We provide a list of lawyers that do this specific type of work, coordinating shipping, the mandatory counseling. There's a lot of steps. I don't know if I've missed anything, Sheena, but the coordination is the big piece. It's Sheena's full-time job. So, and the compliance piece, because you have to comply with the Assisted Human Reproduction Act, and also the mutual matching piece, and really making sure you know who you are matching with, because we do police record checks, we do psychosocial reports and implications counseling. So we do that work, and you get to know who you're being matched with along the way. Facebook groups, it's sort of like a free for all. I'm not saying that there can't be good pre-matches. We've seen some, but it's just easier for us to sort of help guide you through that, just to make sure, because we've had some pre-matches who've then decided that they weren't a good match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest piece is there's someone looking out for both sides, both interests.
Yeah.
The coordination piece is huge. Like Elaine said, it's my full-time job. Every clinic has different requirements for what they need to have and to accept embryos into the program. Not all clinics accept embryos into the program. Even knowing who to contact at each individual clinic would be challenging. So we've seen it where it turn out really well, but they inevitably are much more complicated. So I think if you could just have professional guidance, it's always going to be in your best interest. The pricing changes a little bit with pre-matches as well. So it's not the same exact process, but if anyone ever wanted information, again, it's the same thing. You can email us or call us, and we are happy to provide that information.
Awesome. Thank
That's
you
excellent.
so much.
Yeah.
Well, we have to wrap up, but we want to say thank you so much for all of you joining us tonight. We're going to tag where you can find more information and contact Beginnings if you're interested in embryo donation or adoption. A reminder that the Fertility Party is coming up June 22nd, so get your tickets if you haven't already. And anything else there? Oh, support group. Support group is on Monday, May 26th at 7:30 p.m.
Yep, sign up. We have them all over Ontario. We have them virtually. So yeah, don't forget to sign up. Also, every Wednesday, you can catch us again on Fertility Village Live. Coming up, hopefully we'll get to talk to more people from Beginnings during Adoption Awareness Month in the fall. But again, thank you so much for all of you being here and sharing your stories. They were short, and I'm sure they're more in depth, but we're very grateful for you all being here and sharing the information for something that is not widely known. So hopefully we can get the word out there.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much, everybody.
Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
See you next.
Welcome to Fertility Village.